So we've got a big topic on the EPA's recent ruling, the AIM Act, that was published September 20th. And the goal of this legislation is to reduce HFCs by 85% by 2036. And just onto some of the gray areas, just kind of highlight what are the current gray areas, what are the current questions being asked for application of this subsection H.
The big issue, which is paralyzing our industry right now, is what the EPA intends or what the regulation means with regard to light commercial air conditioning. The regulation states that residential and light commercial air conditioning is not regulated by this, which, for supermarkets, traditionally, all air conditioning has been defined by the EPA as light commercial air conditioning. Even supermarket air conditioning rack systems that might have 600 pounds of refrigerant, for some reason, the EPA historically has still defined that as light commercial air conditioning. So when everybody read in the regulation that was not covered by this regulation, you could kind of hear the universal whoop that went up. And then we sat in the webinar from the Green Chill Partnership a couple days ago, and they started to waffle on that. They basically said, well, we define light commercial as, something that is kind of residential like, right? That is meant to cool a small space. And so the supermarket industry was then left thinking, well, wait a minute. What are we then? How you define it this way in this area. Now you suddenly are inventing this new definition. So basically, the first thing that everybody needs to do to be in compliance is they need to immediately go out, survey their equipment in their stores so that they can get this smaller equipment into their record keeping system. However, they cannot begin doing that until the EPA clarifies whether they are including all of this air conditioning equipment or not, right? And so the last question I asked the EPA for clarification, it took them 9 months to get back to me. And that was the question of whether a micro-distributed propane system was a product or a system. 9 months to get an answer to that. So for people to be in compliance by January 1st, 2026, first step is to get all that equipment in your record keeping system. If you can't begin until the EPA clarifies this, the EPA is setting up a situation where it's going to be impossible for people to be in compliance by the date they've set in the regulation for lack of a definitive answer on their part. And this is not a criticism. I think many people in the industry have tried to express the urgency of them clarifying this. I frankly don't understand why they didn't just leave it at appliances with 15 or more pounds, right? Yeah. If they meant to exclude small air conditioning, that would have done it. If they meant to include large air conditioning or any, things in supermarkets, they could have just set the regulation at any appliance that contains 15 or more pounds of an HFC refrigerant. And that to me would have been a lot simpler, a lot more straightforward, but they've set up this area where really nobody even knows how to start. The other big issue that's a big gray area is this requirement as of January 1st, 2029, that you must use reclaimed refrigerants to service all existing equipment. I think people don't know where reclaimed 448 and 449 is supposed to come from, right? There are two sources of reclaimed refrigerant: equipment end of life. You recover the refrigerant and you reclaim it. Most people's 448, 449 equipment is nowhere near its end of life. Or during refrigerant retrofit, you recover the old refrigerant, you reclaim it, replace that old refrigerant with a better refrigerant. There are no reclaimed refrigerants for 448, 449. So there's no source of used refrigerant to reclaim. Everybody's trying to move into 448, 449 because it's low GWP. I've actually heard people say they're going to put a stop to that, maybe stay with their 404, 507 equipment, because at least they know they will be able to source reclaimed 404, 507 by January 1st, 2029. So I don't know why the EPA didn't make that servicing reclaim mandate, for instance, for refrigerants with GWPs greater than 1500, that would have incentivized people to move to more 448, 449. Above and beyond that, those two refrigerants are patented, so it's not even legal for reclaimers to basically reconstitute them, right? Because they'd be violating the patents on those.